And welcome to the Daily Space Weather, folks. I'm your host, Dan, aka smAsho. Welcome to the Smash News Network, the least busted name in news. It's our Sunday edition. Whether we're talking about aliens or sedition is an entirely other story. We'll be talking about solar cycles and M51, as well as a bunch of current stuff, meteorology stuff, and we'll be all over the place. First thing we're going to do is we're going to take a look at the local yellow dwarf in 193 angstroms. We've got a bunch of coronal holes here extending from both the north and south solar polar regions, as well as one on the equator and a small active region rising in the northeast. We'll let it play through a second time for you here. This is 48 hours of data from the SDO, probably the best solar observation post in history. Providing top-notch level imagery. And next we'll look at some helioviewer movies. Here is one day of activity in 304 angstroms. And you see some filaments rising up there in the northeast. That's that active region. Whether it's a sunspot or not, you'll have to remain in suspense over. And before we move on, let's just check the life of the stream here at the Smash News Network, least busted name in news. And everything looks good to go. Let's go to the next imagery here. Here is 171 angstroms. Again, this is back to 1 day worth of activity. And here's a close-up of that active region. Magnetic looping behavior just popping up over the surface there. Great view of that from helioviewer.org. And if you're wondering where the SDO is, that's where the SDO orbits. Let's look at the colorized magnetogram to see if we see anything interesting going on in the south. And the most active region from yesterday has sort of evaporated. It's become less magnetically complex. And do we see any fields up here? And indeed we do see some field organization. Check it out. And this is just 1 day, by the way, so yeah. We see some fairly organized fields ahead of that active region. Something to keep an eye on. When I say eye on, well, the pun is entirely intentional. Now, as you may have noticed, we have made some changes to the format. We've also got some new playlists and stuff. Don't forget to check all that stuff out. And let's get back to some more data. The radio flux, which is the 10.7 centimeter variety. I believe it's 2800 megahertz. Correct me if I'm wrong, viewers. I know our viewers are very detail-oriented. There's the approximately 3-year graph of the radio flux. 71 is the current state, and we like to see smooth monthly values over 70 as we come out of a solar minimum. KP index has been at 0 for the past 12 hours there. Let's hit refresh. KP index at 0. Now it looks like there is a coronal hole wind stream striking right now. So look for that to come up throughout the day today. Small increase in the X-ray flux, nothing resembling what we would call a solar flare, and no big proton strikes. Next we'll go to the real-time solar wind, and I'll check the chat if you are viewing live on Twitch. We do take chats all too seriously, and we will indeed respond to them appropriately. Real-time solar wind is showing us a sudden increase recently in the past 10 hours. Solar wind density went from 2.4 up to right on the peak right now, around 9 protons per cubic centimeter. Solar wind speed still at 300 kilometers per second. Expect to see this density drop down and the speed to go up. It's typically what we see at the leading edge of a coronal hole wind stream. We also see shifts in the BTBZ happening at the same time. Some weak magnetism measured by the GOES magnetometer. We'll get to it in a minute. Here's 4 hours of data of the magnetosphere, a visualization, the space weather modeling framework. And there's obviously a lot of variables associated with earthly geomagnetism, and it's, let's just say, not fully explainable through what we would call mainstream science, cosmology, astronomy, etc. Next 4 hours of ground magnetic perturbations. This will show you changes in the Earth's B field, so hence geospace delta B. Looking at ground-based magnetometers here, and not a lot of perturbations happening there. Again, very weak magnetometer readings by the GOES 16. We'll get to it toward the end of the video. Actually, I guess toward the middle of the video. It's coming up momentarily because we try to keep all the formats sort of where it ought to be. And oh my God, there's been some power outages. There's been quite a lot of power outages, and we're not seeing quite as many as we have seen. Florida, Alabama getting a lot of them fixed. Louisiana showing much lower numbers. That's a good thing. We don't like to report on disasters. And there you see those low GOES magnetometer readings. We're seeing actually pretty low highs and pretty high lows, actually. And for you new viewers, the N's and M's, those are midnight and noon local time for the GOES 16. Let's take a look at a different visualization here. This is from ground-based magnetometers on Earth as well as on stereo A and stereo B. It's what we commonly refer to as the Gong 2 data here at the smAsho Daily News, the daily space weather, that is. And we are solidly in the North Pole current sheet shown in green, and you can see some evidence of the active region rising here. Some jumbled up potential field force lines there. Here's a line of sight field plot, and you can see that big bump in the B field now moving out of the opposite side of the sun out toward stereo A. Not a lot of changes in the B field right now. We don't see anything associated with that active region yet, although the view's not particularly good. And here's the coronal potential field force plot. And it's showing you open coronal hole field force lines in purple, open solar polar field force lines in black, and closed potential field force lines in pink. Now, we did do a smash lights, and we combined it with another feature known as the Scrying with Smash segment. So we've updated both of those playlists. If you haven't checked those out, check out Scrying with Smash, as well as the Smash Lights segment. Sometimes they're included in the daily space weather videos, and sometimes not. It all has to do with a lot of different factors, such as which news we'll be covering, etc., what the stories are, and all of that sort of stuff. So perhaps you'd like to have your hair smelling as good as RBG's here back in 1993 when it was sniffed by No Malarkey Joe. One of the ways you could do that is by heading to smAshomash.org and clicking on Affiliate. And you can scroll down to the Garnier Fructis Sleek and Shine Conditioner as well as the Garnier Fructis Shampoo to make sure that your hair smells perfectly, just in case anybody's sniffing it from behind during some sort of a photo op. Have you heard about the Chinese famine? Well, it's just the worst disaster of all time in terms of death toll. There was cannibalism involved, and the estimation is that tens of millions of people died, hundreds of millions of people died, I don't know. If you want to read some horror stories, there's lots of stories about it. There was also an anti-rightist campaign. Were you aware? Yes. People who wanted a smaller government, not a bigger one, I guess. They favored capitalism over collectivism, and probably cited the fact that centralization has been dead since the end of World War II, really, but it's starting to finally get traction nowadays. Let's all celebrate the death of centralization. By the way, if you enjoy the content, please don't forget to press like and subscribe over on YouTube. Don't worry, we'll wait for you to do so, as the video can't continue until you press the notification bell as well, in hopes that you'll actually see stuff when we put it out. Now, we've got some playlists that you may not be aware of if you only watch the daily space weather videos. So head to youtube.com/smashamash/playlists to see all of those. We've got 76 in the Smash lights. We've got 8 terms defined, which we just updated yesterday, as well as the cosmology segment because they're sort of related, as well as the Smash News Network. So we're going to be adding more and more different types of content. Cheers to everybody who's pressed like and subscribe over there. We're also on BitChute. You will see some exclusive and some redundant content. Thanks to all of our BitChute subscribers. We do stream live daily to Twitch most days for the Daily Space Weather, thanks to our new followers over there. Please tell your friends, foes, science noobs, and science pros. And let's do a little short cosmology segment thrown into today's space weather video, as we spend most of the time talking about the sun, which is the Rosetta Stone of cosmology. So if you want to drop down the rabbit hole of cosmology, join us here at the Smash News Network. We will take regular deep dives into cosmology, as it is one of the many branches of science being rewritten. So part of our mission does involve cosmology. If you want to read about it, head to smashamash.com/forum/mission. As one of the most important parts is assisting, studying, and reporting the ongoing formation of a unified theory of physics. It's part of the reason why we make the videos and why we look at the data so in depth, because we're interested in it. Now, what determines solar cycles? Well, the solar polar fields are the most definitive thing to determine what's going on with solar cycles, the strength at them at solar maximum and solar minimum, and the way they interact, whether they amplify each other or diminish each other's power through their interaction. So the flipping of the fields and so on is very important. If you want to look at some information about that, this graph is available at solon.info/solar. So read up on that if you like. There's a lot of data there. And last year I forecasted cycle 25 to begin in September, I believe, or August or September. So I was off by a few months there. And of course, there's constant conjecture about this, as it takes several months to actually determine when the new cycle is, whether you're counting sunspots, or whether you're looking at the radio flux, or whether you're looking at the solar polar fields, or all kinds of other data such as solar wind and so on. Now, one of the things going on is some folks are attempting to forecast solar storms. And one of the things that involves is figuring out how to time when the plasma leaves the corona and when it's going to strike the magnetosphere. So it's pretty serious, and it's one of the things that we've been doing around here at smAshomash.org and so on. And this is an interesting thing. I was not aware of this until September 18th when I read about it, and I haven't had a chance to put it in a video yet. So this is just a system here to try to time how fast the plasma is coming out. So we've seen coronal mass ejections strike in only about a half an hour, which would be about 1/4 the speed of light. Some protons are able to make it out that fast. The mechanisms are not fully understood, but somebody's studying it, and there are ways to time this by looking at the way the ejecta comes out from the perspective of stereo A especially, but also using the LASCO and so on. That article's on SciTech Daily. Another interesting article on SciTech Daily is zooming in on magnetars. So it's very difficult to measure the distance to these objects, and the National Science Foundation's Very Long Baseline Array, which is a huge radio telescope, believes that it's actually gotten a pretty close distance measurement for this object. It's called XTEJ1810-197, and I'll bet it's available at the Neil Gorell Swift-Bat X-ray Observatory. Let's check and see if we can see X-ray transmissions from it. What was the dash? Dash 197. Indeed it is there. There it is. So there are the X-ray emissions from that magnetar pulsar. And check it out. Did it just shut off? It looks like it shut off in 2018, folks. That's pretty odd. Pretty weird. Pretty sketchy. All right. Anyway. So that's another advancement there. Cheers to whoever's doing the work on that at the National Radio Astronomy Observatory. Well done. getting an appropriate measurement to the magnetar. And there's another great video here on SciTech Daily as well. It's about the way the solar cycle is tracked. So this is a good video if you're not like super familiar with the way the solar cycle is tracked. I'll play a little clip from it, but you need to head to SciTech Daily to see it. It is their video from their YouTube channel. I'll only play a clip as I don't want a copyright strike.
There's a rhythm emanating from the sun to the edges of the solar system.
And anyway, they talk about all this sort of different things, you know, the solar polar magnetic field reversals, the way sunspots migrate, the way the fields migrate to the poles, the way the sunspots migrate to the equator at solar minimum, the solar polar fields, and all that sort of stuff. Now, there are some interesting theories about what's driving the solar cycles, and I'm not going to discuss them on this one because I got to save it for a more in-depth cosmology segment. But there are some interesting theories coming out of me, which, again, I'll definitely get on that soon. So again, check out those articles there. The space section on SciTech Daily is quite good, and it is my favorite science publication. They even cover stuff on the weekends. When they say daily, they weren't kidding. And let's do a featured object here. Today we're going to zoom in on Sinbad, and today's featured object is the Whirlpool Galaxy M51. Now, the first record that I ever produced actually had the Whirlpool Galaxy on it. It's got an interesting interacting dwarf galaxy there out at the end of one of its spiral arms. Here's a great infrared image of it. This is on Wikipedia's article about M51. And yeah, my first CD label actually featured M51. So if you want to read all about that, it's located at a distance of approximately 23 million light years, allegedly. And it is a Seyfert 2 galaxy, which means you're looking almost directly down the poloidal field of it. I'm not sure if this sub-galaxy, I believe that's called M51b. But so it looks exceedingly bright in the middle. And yeah, it's part of a large group of galaxies known as the M51 group. If you want to read about that, there's an extensive Wikipedia article about it. Also, another thing you may want to do is check out smashamash.com/forum. There's a huge cosmology segment in there, including our section about the most, such as the largest close galaxy, M31, otherwise known as the Andromeda Galaxy, which we've got a great view of because we're not looking directly down across the disk or directly perpendicular to the disk. We get a great view of it. We're able to see a lot of its features from what's, you know, a little better idea of what's going on in its core than an edge-on disk, obviously. Check it out, smashamash.com/forum. And check our other links out. smashamash.org will relocate you to smashamash.com. Thanks to our subscribe stars and to our patrons, the true source of funding for the content. And let me just check the chat. No chat's coming through. Let's move on. And once again, please consider becoming a patron if you haven't done so. It's patreon.com/smashamash. And we do update this credit crawl once a month. It's only for active patrons. And I believe we sent some more audio through yesterday to the spirit level on up. There are actually 9 tiers over there. Let's talk COVID. Now, I'm not very scared and spooked of the COVID. I'm just going to leave it up there because it's beta chat. The worst thing that's going to happen is it might fall on my head and rain cheap plastic down on me. Were you aware that there's been a lot of attempts by big tech to trace you? And different countries have all kinds of crazy rules about requiring tracing apps. It hasn't gone over well with society. Anyway, we were updating, I should say, the COVID section at smashamash.com/forum. Check it out. Back on April 27th, actually on the 26th, Zero Hedge reported that Bill Gates said China did a lot of things right. Now, if you remember what I was saying all the way back in January, that China has showed what a paper tiger it is because of the way the initial outbreak of the pandemic was handled in the city of Wuhan. It was quite a disaster. And yeah, It was quite a disaster, and the first thing I had to say was that, man, oh man, China is a paper tiger. No offense to the Chinese people, but newsflash, centralization is dead. So, plan accordingly, because we don't need these giant governments. What you may need is a whole bunch of protective equipment, or maybe the links. But at smashamash.com/affiliate, you can find all kinds of stuff: supplements, pulse oximeters, food ingredients, smashed potatoes, respirators, cartridges, etc., goggles, hazmat suits, gloves, other gloves, my bio bug out bag, USB drives, UV wands, Trident, shark socks, and more. smashamash.com/affiliate. Again, check out smashamash.com/forum. The free for all forum is very interesting. There's a dream log. There's a section about autophagy that I just updated 2 days ago. Cycling enthusiasts, who will win the Tour de France today? I've got an idea, but I didn't watch yesterday's stage, so don't give it away if you're aware, as I'll be watching. I'll be watching the rest of yesterday's uphill time trial later. Again, check out the Smash Lights playlist and the other playlists, and let's get back to the data again. But first, since you're so cheap in Chinese, I'm just gonna see that? I just used the force of my mind. I telekinetically killed the virus. Sorry, COVID, no offense. Here's your 1-year graph of electron flux. And we don't see any charging hazards last I checked. Electron flux forecast is forecasted to remain flat. And I would agree, at least for the next 24 hours. Here's the last 3 days. Quite low levels of electron flux. We don't expect to see a lot of GPS errors. Here's a visualization of the entire air column from the thermosphere down, giving you an idea of how many electrons the GPS satellite you may be communicating with must go through in order to get to the ground, which causes massive refraction and huge GPS errors. Typically we see them around the equator at noon. There's a visualization of it. It's looking pretty normal here. GPS errors are not expected to be out of the ordinary. Here's just one slice of the atmosphere. It's just the ionosphere layer. And we're showing a full day of this now. It's looking pretty normal to me here. Nothing too exciting to write home about there, or to write away about. That data from 9:45 Universal Time. Again, looking pretty normal there. Here's where stuff is in the solar system. Welcome to space. All your weather comes from here. There's where things will be in 1 week. I like to draw a star chart. Add in -the-sky.org. If you're up before dawn, you may see Venus, the third brightest object in the sky, at magnitude -4.1, hitting the headlines recently as being probably the most likely other planet in the solar system to have life because of all that phosphine. There's no geologic or cosmic explanation of how all of that phosphine shows up, only a biologic explanation so far. So just because you don't understand the science doesn't mean there isn't science to explain a phenomenon. And we see an Antarctic earthquake at a 5.3 magnitude here, as well as a very high quake in Hawaii. I'll bet that one's on Mauna Loa. And almost directly underneath the main caldera, quite underneath a sub-caldera. It's at about, 12,000 feet of altitude there. A depth of -2.8 kilometers, folks. 2.8 kilometers above sea level. Certainly magmatic in nature. See some deep quakes kicking off also, such as this 4.4 at Argentina. It looks like the largest quake of the past 24 was this 5.8 in the mid-Indian Ridge, almost due south of India, in the middle of nowhere, and that is one heck of a desolate spot right there in the middle of the Indian Ocean. Probably nobody in any place anywhere near there. Here's a deep quake in the northern Mariana Islands. It's a 4.5 magnitude at 121 kilometers. Here's a 4.5 at Peru. And let me just check the stream of the life. The stream of the life of the stream. So there you go, another deep quake in western South America. And this one coming in as we did the show live. It's 4.6 at the Philippines at nearly 100 kilometers depth. Let's look at volcanoes. Etna's back on the list. Strombolian explosions on the island of Sicily. Dacono also exploding, flight level 7070, 7,000 feet. Popocatépetl has dispersed its ash. Sangay exploding, flight level 210, 21,000 feet. Revenador exploding, flight level 150, 15,000 feet. Sabancaya likewise exploding, flight level 240. It's a 24,000 foot ash plume, which is probably too big for you to do the Fosbury flop over. Lots of freeze warnings, and we've got some frost warnings right where I'm located. If you're wondering where, it's right around here in the Lehigh Valley. And yes, we are interested in restoring Lehigh County, as I would rather fix the problems than flee from them. Thanks for everybody who's been making America not suck again, or perhaps making Earth not suck again. Shout out to our international viewers. And check out the Gulf Coast, bad times. By the way, this Galveston Pier is indeed supposed to be above water. That does not make for good mooring conditions. That news from AccuWeather's Weather News, AccuWeather.com. Which, by the way, has no affiliation with the Smash News Network. We provide the information at massive personal risk and expense. Here's the precipitation forecast, and we're getting 20-inch rain forecasts for parts of North Carolina and Virginia, as well as South Carolina and Louisiana. And my crystal ball just fell off of my toilet paper microphone and nearly killed me. These are the risks that I take to provide this information. Like I said, it's provided at massive personal risk and expense. Anyway, there's the forecast through midnight on October 2nd. That's midnight Universal Time. So the rain forecasts have been downgraded a little bit around the Texas and Louisiana coast, but upgraded massively for South Carolina, North Carolina, and Virginia, as well as parts of the Chesapeake Bay. Expect some docks to be underwater there as well. Now, we had a viewer ask a question about what's going on off the coast of Daytona. And here's the jet stream environment. That's flight level 250, 25,000 feet of altitude. And you can see this lengthy low-pressure ridge right here. And that's what it has to do with, because it ends right here. There's an atmospheric river in that area. There's an area of moisture, which is causing a much lower pressure situation. And that's causing this little low pressure here right on Daytona Beach. And you can see a huge wind disparity there. The wind is coming from the north, and then it's swirling around because the pressure is so much lower in that spot. And we'll show you what's going on in the water vapor momentarily. Here is the jet stream scenario. And you can see very cold air being injected down into places like the eastern Great Lakes. Here is the eastern world's jet stream scenario. And still the jet stream is blowing the opposite direction across the Indian Ocean here. We got jet stream blowing east to west, which is far from normal. Here's a water vapor situation. Shout out to the European and African viewers. Here's a water vapor situation for the Far East and Oceania. Shout out to our Far Eastern viewers and our viewers from Munda. Here is the water vapor map for the Americas. Here's me allowing you to see me check the stream. And here's the pressure map situation for the whole planet. We'll let this advance into tomorrow before we show you a couple more weather things, a couple more images of the sun, and get out of here, as there's lots to do on this Sunday. Here's where we expect things to be at 1 o'clock my time tomorrow. Major high pressure ridge there over the northern U.S. and a pretty hefty low pressure system there over the southern portion of Alaska, as well as a significant low off of Texas, as well as in the central Atlantic. I should say the western Atlantic. Lightningmaps.org is going to show us where the real-time lightning situation is situated. I don't see any terrestrial lightning in the U.S., so we're going to move on. That's lightningmaps.org, by the way. Here's a U.S. Doppler map, and insult to injury is being added to southern Louisiana, as well as much of the Gulf Coast. Here's that situation near Daytona, and yeah, what's going on there is sudden extreme cloud nucleation, and then sudden extreme rain, it looks like. Extreme cloud nucleation situation there. And there's a great view of it in the water vapor map. Clouds forming, raining suddenly, and then reforming right in the same spot. And this dry air is sort of holding that low in place. That's sort of the end of the atmospheric river right there. The atmospheric river goes all the way up the coast. Here's a view of it. So keep in mind, folks, moist air, this air right here, is much less massive than this air right here. This is much higher pressure than this, and this is a low pressure ridge because of all that moisture. Check out the Caribbean. This is an interesting water vapor scenario here. A lot of turbulence there, so any plane flights going across that area, it'll be like a bus ride on a bumpy road if you fly through those regions. And hey, Smash team, it's about time to close this thing out. We've got some bonus features that we're going to show you as well. By the way, thanks for flying American Smashways. Please allow me to vanish and remind you to keep your head and arms inside the Smash plane at all times while we play bonus features. Let's do the 94 angstroms 48-hour SDO video, the intensitygram where we'll show you 0 sunspots, and the colorized magnetogram to show you any areas of magnetic complexity. That's the area I'm interested in. I don't think we see any sunspots yet. It's a little bit too early. Again, there's some active regions rising up there. It's something to keep an eye on. Now, when I say ion, well, the pun is intentional. Here's a bunch of iron ions. It's 94 angstroms. It's 48 hours worth of stuff. Thanks for tuning into the Sunday edition. Again, check the links below the video. Head to smashamash.org. Get involved. Set up a login at the forum and tell us what you're interested in. Perhaps we'll feature it on an upcoming piece of content. Stare at the sun, don't drink it. If you do, don't drive. And since it'll never be now again, seriously, don't drive. May that solar wind be at your back and that covidiocy absent from the entire multiverse. Or if you don't believe in multiverse, universe, or plane of existence, or solar system, galaxy, etc.